Hey everybody, Jim Ingersoll here, hanging out with the always amazing Michael Zuber, who you're going to love getting to know today. It's his second time on the show. He's the author of One Rental at a Time. And guess what we're going to talk about? Buying rental properties. As you guys know, all of my success listeners know, it's something near and dear to my heart because it changes people's trajectories of their lives if you're able to do it and you have the patience to hang in there long term. And that's some of the keys we'll talk through today. We're actually going to dig into how to go from just a few rentals to a whole bunch. And what are some of the ways that you find them, evaluate them, finance them, and keep them for your own financial future along the way. Michael, welcome back to Real Estate Success.
Hey, Jim, thank you very much for having me back. I'm always amazed about what you're doing and really admire what you do for your audience. So anytime you want to talk, I'm here for you.
Awesome. And you as well. So I've got a copy of your book. I want to tell everybody in YouTube, go to Amazon, get it, One Rental at a Time. It's a great book. Take a picture of it with the book and tag Michael Zuber because he loves seeing the selfies with the books. So it's great. Here's what it says on the back of the book. This will be our lead in. Have you ever thought about real estate investing as a path to financial freedom? Have you kicked around the idea but kind of felt like you were too busy with work and family responsibilities? If so, One Rental at a Time can transform your life just as it has transformed my life and the lives of thousands of others. Do you still believe that?
Oh, with every fiber of my body. Yes, absolutely.
So what do you think the difference is between people that get to be burned out landlords and sell to people like me versus the ones that really hang in there and manage their property to the point and create a portfolio to the point they get financial freedom?
Well, I think there's a couple of things because like you, a pretty frequent seller to me is a burned out landlord. So yes, we have the same experience. I think a couple of things that I've seen in my history. First is they could be over leveraged, right? They either purchased with the maximum leverage, or at some point during the time they got greedy or overzealous and they did a cash out refinance. Mm-hmm. And they basically turned what was a positive experience into a negative. And I'm not immune to this. As you know, Jim, in my book, I wrote about how I bought that first property. We were really happy. A couple of years later, I created what I call an alligator, and they hurt. And knowing that our property is going to be negative every month and then to suffer the ills of being a landlord, a broken window, a broken water heater, a late paying tenant, it's sort of, a death by 1,000 cuts. And they're like, get this thing away from me. So the ones that hold on, they're not maximum. They're not leveraged to the hilt. They were okay putting an extra 10% down. They also do more maintenance, right? They're fixing small things versus, you know what, let's let that run another 6 months and we'll take care of it later. Some of my earliest mistakes that bit me hard was, trying to patch a roof, right? Oh, if we just patch it, we'll get through the rainy season in California and we'll be good another year. Nope. There's just things that you should do as a landlord, take the early pain versus the late pain. And so that's what I think. I think people that get stuck with negative cash flow, or what I call alligator properties, are 1, 2, 3 bad events from going, I give up, sell this thing. It's not for me. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've heard part of my story, but when Sean and I got started as landlords in our 20s, I watched my dad do it, and he made it look so easy. He was an architect. He did it your way, right? Working full-time and buying properties made it look so easy that Cheryl and I jumped in when we were like 24, and that didn't go well. I mean, it looked so good on paper, man. Because it was like $20,000 for a duplex, and there's a reason it was 20 grand. You don't have tenants in it too. Oh. But, you don't attract good tenants when you have, loads of deferred maintenance and lack of capital to make those improvements. Mm-hmm. And you don't have a clue how to manage, like I didn't. I had no idea how to screen a tenant, do a lease, an application, none of that. It's just like, literally, if you showed up, I would meet you after my job working as an engineer all day. You had a pulse and some money in your pocket. Come on in.
It's an easy yes answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like stuff would break. Like near Buffalo is cold, so we had a lot of space heaters and boilers, and I didn't have money to hire people when those things broke. So it was before YouTube and before the internet. I went to Walden Books and bought a great big hardcover book, and I would read in there how to fix a boiler and
Oh
how
my
to
God.
fix a water heater. And I had to DIY it because I didn't have money. I was 24 and it
Hmm.
all looked so good on paper. And then Cheryl's like, we need to sell this thing. And I moved to Virginia and I did. I sold it. I didn't lose any money. It was all good. But that cost me like 10 years of investing because I did it wrong. She swore we would never be landlords again. So you asked a really good question recently in one of your social media posts, and you're great at all this. What are some of the really key attributes? And I said in there, you got to have patience.
Yeah.
It's one of the ones I've worked on. And so if you just start buying assets that create cash flow, the equity is going to grow over time, but you got to have patience to hang in there.
Oh, yeah, no question. I actually just put something out today, and it's actually loading on my phone right now up to YouTube. It is financial freedom is hard, but a better financial future is easy. And it all comes down to time, right? Yes, having financial freedom with buy and hold rental properties is absolutely possible. I've documented the story in the book, One Rental at a Time. Absolutely possible. But it's hard because you have to think in decades. You have to consistently sacrifice, live below your means, make choices that are not fun, so that you can eventually, create a portfolio that exceeds your monthly expenses. So it's absolutely possible. If you don't want to go down that road, you can have a better financial future just getting 1, 2, 3, 4 rentals. And I promise you, letting your tenants buy 70% of your asset is awesome, right? You put 30% down, they're going to pay the other 70% over 30 years. You win, I promise. So you got a choice, right? Do you want a better financial future? Great. Follow Jim, get a couple of rentals. If you want to sacrifice and you're willing to sign in for the long haul, you can have financial freedom. It's not going to be easy. It starts slow, but in time you will continually add units and you'll get there. So it's your choice watching this. Do you want a better future or do you want freedom? Your choice.
Or both.
Yeah, or both. Yeah.
It's all
Why
good.
not?
I'll take one of each, right? Check the box at the bottom. All of the above.
All the above, please. There you go.
All right. So let's talk about, I really do believe that if 3 to 5 rentals, 3 to 5 houses, 3 to 5 doors, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
changes the life of most people if they hold on to those rentals, say 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Pick a number, whatever number.
No question. Yep.
But let's talk about somebody who's really wants to go after aggressively finding that financial freedom. How do you go from like 3, 5, 7 houses to start adding more doors like yourself and Alex Lugovoy and other people that have done that?
Mm-hmm.
What steps do you take? How do you find them? How do you finance them? How do you analyze them? What do you do?
Yeah, we're gonna this is going to be a lengthy conversation because there's lots of avenues that you could go down. Right, going back to the story that's documented in the book, the big event for me was realizing that single family homes, this is like in 2006, did not make financial sense. For the listeners, if you haven't read this, right, we were buying houses roughly for $100,000 that rented for $1,100, so they made sense. Fast forward 3.5 years later, that same house was suddenly worth almost $270, but still rented for $1,100. So it made no financial sense as a rental property, right? It was an alligator through and through. So what we did is we had a choice. We were at this inflection point that you're asking about, Jim. And what we did is we said, okay, we're not going to buy another house. And that's all we've done today, right? We didn't know any different. But, we went to real estate meetups. We went to masterminds like the one that you hold. I think your next one's 2020, Dealmaker 2020, something like that. See, I'm paying attention to you. And what we did is we decided to do what's called a 1031 exchange. We decided to exit residential. And as you know, residential is 1 through 4 units. And we decided to 1031 our equity into what is called small commercial properties. So we sold all 8 houses, technically exchanged all 8 houses. And we moved into as small as 5 units and as large as 18 units. So we went from 8 to 80 doors. This can be done at any time, because what you'll see, the difference between residential financing and commercial financing is, and commercial is 5 units and above, just so we're clear, is the building is what is being really lent against. Not in residential, it's you, the borrower, you, your credit, you, your cash reserve, you, your financial statement. On a commercial property, it's the building or the asset first, and you, the borrower, second. So even during the real estate crash of kind of 08 to 11, you could still get into commercial lending, even if you were even if you owned a lot of rentals, which we did. We couldn't buy any more rental like houses because banks wouldn't lend to us, right? So we had to do something else. So commercial, getting into the commercial space, 5 to 20 units is absolutely possible. It's sparked a lot of our growth. So first is getting comfortable with the difference between residential lending and commercial lending. Interest rates a little higher. They don't do 30-year fixed. They typically do 25-year AMs, maybe 5, 7, 10-year kind of fixed. So there's some differences. The down payment is more significant. Usually it's 35% versus 20, right? So there's just some things you need to get comfortable with. But one of the keys to our growth and our financial freedom was moving out of houses when they were overpriced and moving into small apartments when they were underpriced. And that was, that's the first answer. And I'm sure we'll go through more.
So I love all of that. All right. So rates in our area, commercial rates in our area are dropping. I'm being quoted like 5.5 to 5.7 right now, which is really good. Mm-hmm. I can cash flow that. I like it.
Yeah.
And our call rates are typically between 5 and 10 years. And then I've been through a number of them, and it's more of a renewal.
Yes.
And to keep my amortization going, I drop the years based on the renewal at that refi point.
Okay.
As well as the way I've handled it. I love the idea that you said you went from 8 doors to 80 doors. That's a big conversation and a big jump for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I would love for you to speak on that at my Dealmaker 2020 that you mentioned a minute ago, and elaborate on that if you could. Mm-hmm. But you're right. When you go from having W-2 income and you fill up all your Fannie Mae properties, then you're done. I think it's 10 per person.
Correct.
I'm working with my daughter Chris on this now because she still works, and then so she can get 10, and then she'll be done, and then you got to go into commercial. That's what I've been using for a very long time, and you as well. And that commercial financing works in our area. You can do 20 to 25% equity, and you're good. It's not 30.
Okay,
and
cool.
Rates are 5.5, 5.7 with a 5 to 10 renewal, and that all works. It cash flows pretty well, and it goes really well. But how do you find those? How did you go back when you look back and you sold those single families and you went to apartment buildings? How did you start to find them and analyze them to like get out of the alligator lake and into the cash flow lake?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So one of the first things that I can only say, and when I reviewed our past, I wish I could tell you I was this smart in the beginning. I wasn't. I was lucky at best. But when you get through it and you go, hey, that was pretty cool. Yeah. One of the things that I did is I created a yield calculation that I use to compare any property I'm looking at. I can take a condo, a studio condo, and compare it against a 20-unit apartment building. And simply said, it's how much cash do I need to take out of my pocket to secure this asset? And that means down payment, closing cost, and make ready to make it a functioning asset, right? So that's the denominator or the lower number. And then what I put on the numerator is what's my expected yearly cash flow once I'm getting market rent, right? So you subtract all the expenses and all of that. So that produces a percentage. And what I have always looked for is I look for some certain number. In today's market, I look for 6%. Back in 08, I was looking for 8%. Back in like 2010, it was 15%, right? Because the market's changing all the time. So again, I wish I could tell you I had this. I wish I could tell you I knew what I was doing then, but I use that same calculation today. I still use it on every deal I look at. I think it's a mistake, an absolute mistake for investors to go, hey, here's my mindset for looking at a house. And then, oh, by the way, here's my mindset for looking at a 10-unit apartment building, because the vocabulary is so different, right? Gross multiplier, cap rate, all this other nonsense that's put out there to confuse people. No, I'm a buyer. I'm going to give you hard-earned money out of my savings account or money market account or whatever, and I expect some kind of return on that. Why should it matter if it's a residential house or a commercial apartment building? And,
so you start with the amount that you have to personally contribute or your business contributes. Like,
I need to wire out of my account. Yes, absolutely.
And one of the things I like to look for is opportunities where I put as little as possible and leverage as much as I can, knowing that I got to back into my financing with at least 20% equity. And then the debt service cover ratio forces me to have cash flow also. So and the question for everybody is, like, if you could buy apartments with as little money out of your pocket as you needed, then you could buy as many as you want.
Sure. Yeah, I think, everybody has their own, once you do this enough, right? And we're now talking to people that in theory have 4 or 5, even 10 houses, right? So they have some experience. What you should be at this point is understanding who you are and what you do, right? In your example, it's about minimizing out-of-pocket cash, looking for that value-add opportunity, looking for that leverage. That's great. It works, and lots and lots of people do that. For me, at this point, that's too much work, right? I want to be able to compare a 10-unit apartment building with a 1-bedroom condo and go, hey, I don't care. Trust me, if I pay cash for the condo and like cash and full make ready, and it produced a better return than a 10-unit apartment building, I'd buy the condo every day, all day long. Even if it took more cash, it doesn't matter.
But if you're looking at a 10-unit apartment and say it's $1 million,
okay,
you could, if that was like full retail, then you could just put your 30% down, but that's $300,000.
Sure.
That takes a lot of people right out.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so for that reason, a lot of people get stuck and they're like, I can never make that leap from single family to multi without like syndicating and doing a fund or something like that also.
Yeah. Well, again, I can only tell you, I was that person, right? I had, for the first 8 years of my 15-year journey, I never thought I would own anything but a house. I didn't know any different. I grew up in a house. I thought all houses were 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. I mean, I didn't know any different, right? I'm busy working 60 hours a week. I have barely enough time to look at stuff. And I thought apartment buildings were owned by hedge funds and like very, 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 very rich people, right? Like the top 1%. And what I found out is no, if you buy some houses and they appreciate, you can do a 1031 exchange. So I got into those. I went from 8 houses to 80 units, no new capital.
Yep.
Nothing. I took nothing out of my bank.
Shifted it, right? From your single family to your multi.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's absolutely possible. It's just sometimes you need, like if we're talking to somebody who's got 5 or 8 or 10 houses, in 8 to 10 years, assuming appreciation and mortgage pay down and all of those things, you're going to be sitting on a pile of equity. And who's to say you couldn't 1031 out of 2 houses into a 10-unit apartment building? But what I would tell you is run the numbers, right? Because I was often the bigger is better guy, right? 10 units is because I experienced, right? For example, the first house I bought for $100,000 sold for $270,000. I ended up 1031ing the equity into a $230,000 5-unit building that rented for triple.
Yeah.
Right. So wait a second. It's $50,000 less and rents are, triple. I mean, what's wrong with this equation, right? But sometimes bigger isn't better. And I don't, at least in my market today, for the first time in 15 years, apartment buildings are priced for perfection. And I think people are going to get hurt. I think single family homes today are better investments than apartment. Now that's rare. I think it's the whole Grant Cardone effect and syndicators and just so many people chasing, because there's not many of them, right? There's only a handful of small apartment buildings available at any one time. And if you suddenly triple or quadruple the demand for this finite set, prices go up, right? Simple economics, supply and demand. So,
you're on the West Coast, you're in Fresno and the Bay Area and stuff. And are they still selling for like a 3 cap out there?
Oh, the Bay Area is in the high 2s at this point.
Yeah.
And Fresno itself's in the 4s. It's crazy. I've never seen it. Even in the peak, they weren't this crazy.
Yep. So they are in high demand. What are some of the other things that an investor trying to figure out how to go from 8 units to 80 needs to start thinking through?
Yeah. So first off, I would tell you is, and we kind of hinted at it already. There's really no difference. If you've done the time and you've done 5 or 6 or 8 single family homes, you could absolutely get to 80 if you choose to, right? There's nothing else you really, it's just adding a zero. That's
That's
all
what
it
I've been
is, right?
saying.
Yeah. It's just an extra zero. And sure, the financial paperwork's a little bit bigger. Yes, you need to have your ducks in a row as far as your tax returns and statements and reserves and all of that, but it's not any different. Rent calculations, lease ups, you need to budget a little bit better. You need to realize that tenant management is more difficult in an apartment building versus a house. That was one thing that I learned, right? My average tenure for houses is about 5 years. It's a little bit more than 5 years. My apartments are just over 2 years, right? So just plan for that, budget for that, right? People's desires to get to a home, once they're in a home, they don't want to leave. People in apartments are more transient. They're often younger. Maybe they're single when they start. They leave when they get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Just realize that you need to have management. And that's why I say that apartments are priced for perfection today, and hence the low cap rates, is because if we get into any kind of recession, unemployment doubles, and that a double is not even crazy, right? Going from 3.7 to 7.4, we've seen that 3 times in our working careers at that high. So I think people need to be careful in that market today, because what I saw is, yes, occupancy goes up in a recession, but what killed me was all my turns, because and I know this because I had 2 years of tax returns where, yes, I had almost 100% occupancy, but I kept having 25% turnover because people kept leaving. So just be careful, but plan for it, right? There's no difference. It is just a zero. Yeah.
I saw an interesting article from our friend Jeffrey Taylor. He was quoted in Forbes magazine.
Mr. Landlord?
Yeah. One of the things that I caught that he said was he offers flexible terms, particularly for like the millennials and the young people who like to be mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned in there that he will allow them to do a 12-month lease or a month-to-month. And if they choose month-to-month, he charges them an extra $50 a month or whatever.
Yeah.
It was an interesting take on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Mr. Land. I follow him. I think he's wonderful. I think what he does and did at your last event was fantastic. Yeah, I like him.
So if you were going to go from 8 to 80 again, and you had single family homes, you could transfer the equity over to cover your down payments. Mm-hmm. What would you do first? Would you sell the 8 mm-hmm. and then get them lined up for 1031, and then hope that you can quickly find the apartment buildings, or how would you sequence it?
No, I would do exactly what we did last time, which is I would identify. First off, I would go learn, right? I'd spend 6 months learning that market, right? Because if I know single family homes, you shouldn't assume you know small commercial. So go spend 90 to 180 days learning that market in your chosen area and see if the numbers are truly better. They were absolutely better for us, so it made sense. What I did is I actually identified 2 to 4 targets that I liked, because again, remember when I was selling, part of this is just my history, right? I was selling houses in 06. Right. Which was kind of easy, right?
Yeah.
So, but the hard part was identifying. So I would go find 2 to 4 targets that I liked. I would then list a house. It would go into escrow, and then I would go make offers on those 2 to 4 units, try to work it out. And my average time inside of the 1031 exchange was less than 30 days because I would do the legwork first, right? And my shortest time was 5 days. Because again, I would work this out and close the house first, put it in the exchange fund, and then move it into the other mm-hmm. units. So I would learn the market first, make sure the numbers work. Because the dates of a 1031 exchange are so fixed,
they are.
I would never just list something and then hope.
Right.
Because then you get to the end of that, you have 2 choices, and they're both terrible. 1, overpay for something, or 2, pay Uncle Sam.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of
either one. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So, okay, so if you look at a duplex, a quad, or something a little bit bigger, say a 6-unit, 8-unit, 10-unit, is there differences in the way that you analyze them for cash flow and equity? Or is it just sequence out all the rent rolls and expenses and go?
I would say it depends on the layout, right? If it's more like, if you can do like a 6 or 8 unit building where they feel like individual houses, they're not like stacked on top of each other, you can do the math like they're houses. That's often not the case once you get to 10 units and above, right? They're at least in my area, right? 5 on the bottom, 5 on top, or 4, 4, 4, right? They're just closer together. So what I have seen, and again, I have the luxury of getting lots of data, right? I once did a 60-month or 5-year look back. My turnover is higher in the stacked, so I have to raise my reserves every month, right? To the tune of somewhere between $250 and $400, depending on unit count, because I know I'm going to have more turns, so I have to budget for that. But if they're spread out and they're like individual houses and I can create separations or little 4-foot fences or whatever, then I can reduce that. But other than that, it's, you got to budget for capital expenses, roofs and water heaters and all of those things. But as far as the general calculation, it's roughly the same. The only number that would really change between a 10-unit apartment and a single family home would be the reserves for turnover in vacancies, because it will be higher, my numbers say, in an apartment than they will be in a house.
I'm glad you brought that up about cash reserves. I think that's a mistake that a lot of landlords make. Well, first of all, a lot of landlords will spend the security deposits and then they will spend all of their money, and then something breaks or they need a new roof or whatever it is. And stuff does happen. And my goal when I rehab is no maintenance for 5 years. I'm really strong on the upfront maintenance.
Big deal. Yep.
Stuff does happen, and you've got to have some reserves for that. Do you have any tips for creating cash reserves? Because I do think it's something nobody ever talks about. Well,
what I did in the beginning is I actually created a separate bank account in a different bank that I have no other relationship with. I didn't have an ATM. I made it hard to get at.
Yes.
So I put money in that other account, and I would have to go to that financial institution to either deposit, or I would take out the checkbook and pay one of those reserves. So that's what I did. That worked for me. I knew that if I had let's just have a third bank account at Bank XYZ, that money at some point would be commingled and my reserves would be nothing. So for me, knowing myself, I opened another bank account at another institution and did not connect them at all.
You were disciplined as far as making the deposit.
Yep.
And if it's hard to take it out, then it just sort of accumulates, and all of a sudden, and when you start getting the commercial financing too, it's one of the things they look at along with equity, your debt service coverage ratio. I find they don't care too much about your income. My credit's good, so I don't know how they look at that, but they do want cash reserves as well. There's a reason they do.
So, there's no question. I mean, commercial institutions, there's a reason that not a lot of commercial stuff went belly up in 08 to 10, right? Is because they had real lending, right? What we suffered through from 06 to 10 was a lending problem. And a lot of commercial stuff didn't go, some did, but not a lot by any stretch. And it was because they were real loans with real reserves, with real asset statements and financial statements and no liar loans. And, commercial lending is legit, right? So that's what protects them, and they're professionals at it. They were not just some transaction coordinator building up some Wall Street fund so they can, do some collateralized debt obligations and synthetics and all that nonsense that blew up.
Yeah. All right, last topic. Okay, so now you guys have gone from 8 to 80, and you got to manage it. So you've done a really good job figuring out how to find a good property manager. Some people think they don't exist. I do think they do exist. I've had a couple of good ones myself. But do you have any final couple tips on how to find a good property manager? Because you've outsourced all of that yourself.
Yeah, we've outsourced in day one, realizing that property management was a key aspect for us because we were 2.5 hours away. It might as well have been out of state. We had never been to the city we chose to invest in, never spent the night, right? So we had to do it. And again, we fired the first 5. So this comes from experience. So the number one trait that I now find that is interesting to me is the principal, right? Meaning the owner, right? The head. I want them to be a real estate investor. I don't want them to be a broker. I don't want them to be some kind of financial person or insurance agent or whatever, because a lot of my pain for the first 5 were from firms that were, they carried a real estate broker's license, or they were real estate agents, or they were these other things. Because what happens, like when the downturn happened, my property manager guy, who I was their number one client, suddenly became their number one REO agent for my market.
Yeah.
And guess what was paying his bills? It wasn't me, right? So I had great service for a long time. Suddenly the market changed and he had a license for something else. He went a totally different direction. So I want the owner to be, and I don't want them to say, hey, I own my house. No, that doesn't make you a real estate investor, right? I want you to own, half a dozen homes. You don't have to be huge, but you have to think like an investor. And then the other thing I would do is know who you are. How do you want to be communicated with? And tell them. Are you a text message kind of person? Are you an email kind of person? Do you want to have a 15-minute phone call every Friday at 9 a.m.? Right? What makes it for you? And then in today's environment with a lot more systems online, right? Is that how you want to communicate? Do you want to do it that way? So, first off, for me, the principle's got to be an investor. And then second, know yourself, right? If you are somebody who likes to talk on the phone with someone for 15 or 20 minutes once a week, but your property manager is so busy they don't have time for that, find that out early. But know how you want to be communicated with, and be brave enough to tell them. And if it doesn't work, great, go somewhere else.
There's others out there, so that's encouraging to everybody. All right. So anybody can go from 1 to 3 to 8. And if you guys really want to go from 8 to 80, then take the tips that Michael's sharing today. Also, come back to my bootcamp, dealmaker2020live.com. Is all the information there, because you're going to see Michael talk in depth on this topic. I think it'll be great. But I've seen some posts recently, Michael, on Facebook from people that like to educate people on things like wholesaling.
Yeah.
And they almost I've seen comments that really bothered me, because they're like, I don't know if you've seen them, but they're like, is landlording ever passive? And then from there, it's like, everybody who tries to be a landlord becomes a motivated seller, and they sell to wholesalers. And it's like they want people to get into that hole and never escape and never enjoy financial freedom. Because when you're wholesaling and when you're flipping, you do those transactions forever. It's like being a realtor as well.
Yeah.
And you never have assets, and you're going to work the rest of your life. So I just want to say that to all of our listeners, if you're seeing threads like that, consider who's making the comments, because I'm seeing it from people that train and educate people how to wholesale. And it's almost like they don't want them to do anything else.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell all of you guys, like Michael, I love being a landlord. I really do. I love being a property owner. That's the best part. And having assets that I can be patient with and hold long-term can really change your life. You agree with all of that?
There's absolutely no question. Whether you're wholesaling or flipping, it is just another job. And it's an expensive job, right? Yes. You have to do marketing and all of that. I'm here to tell you, again, one guy's opinion, there will be less wholesalers in 24 months than there are today.
Oh, I believe so.
Yeah, we have seen the peak. I've been doing this almost 20 years. And every time I start to see the mass of quote unquote gurus come out of the woodwork, I know it's over. And it's over, right? There are so many people out there now marketing and selling courses and all these other things that, oh, by the way, may have even been successful the last 5 years, but I promise you the next 5 years are going to be 10 to 100 times harder than they were the last 5 years. Game over. People don't sacrifice. They can't dive in. You don't need another job. Do the job you have now as best you can, 9 to 5. Do landlording as a side hustle. It is absolutely the best way. If you want a better financial future, go get 2, 4, 6. If you want financial freedom, get 2, 4, 6, and then get to 60, get to 80. It's absolutely doable. You are never going to be financially free being a wholesaler. Sorry, not going to happen.
Yep, I agree with all of that. So watch those posts. Consider who's posting them and what they want from you in the future. All right, Michael, thanks for being my guest today. It's great to catch up with you. Congrats on everything. You've got an amazing book. All of our guests need to go get it, one rental at a time.
Thank you.
My selfie.
Yeah.
And Michael's a great guy, so connect with him. He's got a great YouTube channel, One Rental at a Time. Connect with him in Facebook as well. If you're a friend of mine in Facebook, just look through my friends or just Facebook them, and you'll find them in Instagram and all over the place as well. So make sure you do that. Take advantage of it. If you've already read the book, I want to encourage you to go back and leave a review rather. Having written 2 books myself, I know that those reviews are really critical and they really help tremendously. So if the book made an impact and you haven't left a review yet, make sure you go back and do that. Everybody watching in YouTube or listening in through iTunes, we greatly appreciate you guys. And any last comment, Michael?
No, Jim, just thank you for all you do. You've been doing this a long time. To see the consistency and effort and passion you give is
That means a
fun
lot
to see.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It actually means a lot. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for everybody who's been Facebook messaging me and different things about the podcast and the difference it makes with you guys. We greatly appreciate everybody and hope everyone gets out there and creates financial freedom for your family. See you guys later.